Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new Mattel Jurassic World figure to take a look at, and it's not just any Jurassic World figure. We've got ourselves one of the brand new basic figures, as we have the Yangchuanosaurus, and this is one that I was actually really excited about because it's a very cool species that we've only really seen in the Mattel line once, unless you consider the minis, then I guess twice. But it's like only had this one version, and it was a pretty cool figure. This one, however, should look a little bit different. Still obviously the same style paint scheme, paint apps and stuff, but a little more basic because they're basic figures. However, I am keeping my fingers crossed that the tail will be a little bit longer on this one, because the biggest drawback for the original one was the fact that the tail was super short. Sometimes we get longer tails on the basic figures, so hopefully that'll be the case with this one. The box art is pretty much like I expected, because I kind of feel like this is like Epic Evolution box art, but it doesn't actually say Epic Evolution on it. So I'm going to go ahead and count it as an Epic Evolution basic figure. If you turn it around, though, you can see, first of all, a shot of the figure over here on the side. We have to keep it down here on the side, because if we put it up straight, it's just gone. It's so tall because of the way that these are boxed. Here on the side, you can see the other figures that are in this wave. The Velociraptor Blue, which has been in about 735 waves. The Dilophosaurus, which has been in about 562 waves. And then the only two figures that are brand new, which would be the Suchomimus and the Yangchuanosaurus we are taking a look at. So let's pop this box open and check it out. And here is our Yangchuanosaurus, and we will go ahead and readjust the camera because apparently it was not set in a good spot. But there it is in all its, I guess, glory. The tail does look like, lengthwise, it is a little bit more proportionate to the body, but still, I wouldn't say it's, where it should be. It's definitely still a little bit short, but probably is a little better than the older one, the more mainline version. So that's a plus, at least. This would definitely be a really fun figure to repaint. I can say for sure that that is the case. I am still really quite excited to get a closer look at this with you guys, so let's jump to it. So, beginning up here at the head sculpt of our Yangchuanosaurus, straight away I will say I actually really quite like the look of this one when it comes to the head. Obviously, the Mattel version has this very interesting crest. I'm not entirely sure where they came up with the crest idea, because I don't know that I've ever seen Yangchuanosaurus portrayed with a crest that looks quite like that, but the Mattel figures usually have their own unique appearance, and this one certainly has that. But you can see the head sculpt does look really quite nice. The skin texture, for instance, looks great. Like, you really see some nice looking scale detail here on the side, especially in the lower jaw, but even up here on the upper side of the head, it looks really nice. We've got the nostrils sculpted out right there. You can see all of the teeth are sculpted, and of course there's no articulated jaw or anything. There is articulation on these, but it's usually as basic as it gets, hence the name basic. But there's no paintwork for the teeth either, but you can see there is a nice gloss coat on them, so it kind of helps them shine. But I just wish Mattel would just paint the teeth, because the teeth not being painted kind of bothers me. However, when you lead up to the crest, you do have a nice reddish tone up there for the crest, and you also have some nice detailing within that area as well. The paintwork of the face outside of the missing teeth and one other area looks pretty good for the most part. We've got the nice reddish tone for the crest. You have this nice green. You also have this lighter green for the lower jaw. And then you have this dark brown that kind of runs all through the face here. That's a lot of paintwork for a basic figure, so definitely have to commend them for that. But the eye looks awful, because we have a green and then a brown for the pupil. It could look worse, that's for sure, but I think it wouldn't look so bad if they had given it a nice black pupil, something dark enough to really make the eye stand out, because the green being the same color as the face doesn't help the eye to stand out. It's, it could be natural, so it's not a big deal, but the pupil being a black could have helped to, make that eye pop a little more. As you continue to lead down along the top of the Yangchuanosaurus, you can see very nice looking, very reptilian scale detail moving down, as well as again this dark brown continuing to pattern down along the side of the neck. You've got some osteoderms and stuff poking up here and there. As you move down through the course of the neck of the dinosaur, you also see that the brown does end briefly before picking right back up again right above the shoulder area of the dinosaur. Really nice looking scale detail again as you move down. As you lead down along the underside of the throat, you can see a little bit of saggy skin there in the throat, but you can also see that that light green ends very quickly at the bottom of the throat, and that's gone then. However, we can see some dark brown kind of speckles here and there, so we do have that speckling on this figure like you do see on a lot of Mattel figures. You can also see some nice muscle definition moving down through the course of the arm, nicely sculpted fingers. You've got some nice scoots running down the fingers, some osteoderms poking up here and there as you move down through the course of the arm. The nails also are pretty big and they have a decent look to them. They definitely look menacing, that's for sure, as well as a nice gloss coat to them, but no actual paintwork, just like the teeth. As you move up into the stomach, we continue to have, again, that very reptilian-style scale detail leading up. You, again, see that brown show up here, but once you reach the hip region, as always, it disappears and then is gone. We have very bumpy skin texture for the Yangchuanosaurus, as we have all sorts of osteoderms, bigger, bumpier osteoderm-like scales popping up sporadically through the course of the figure. You also have these kind of like ridges moving along the back of the dinosaur. And then you lead down into the thigh. We have some nice muscle definition in the thigh. Again, more clusters of those larger osteoderm style scales, as well as the calf muscle right there, the kneecap in the front of the leg. And then you lead down into the foot sculpt. The foot sculpt also looks really good. You can just see how nice the actual texture to this looks. Like, it really pops on the sculpt. It does look very crisp, very high quality and impressive. You've got some scoots running down the toes, and you can see more of that speckling down here. Again, a gloss coat on the nails, even including the dew claw. Kind of looks like it has maybe a gloss coat on it, but no nail paint. So, I mean, it's like they tried, but they didn't at the same time. It's weird. And then you lead up again into the tail, and you can see, of course, there's a little area of separation here where the tail's kind of a lot shorter than it probably should be, or like a lot thinner, I should say, and that's where the tail connects, of course. That's kind of standard for Mattel. You have more of this almost like a sail-like look kind of leading out, like up here on the back. Kind of looks like ridges, but almost like webbed ridges. It's weird. And then you have a nice little curve to the tip of the tail as you lead out. You can see a little bit of a curve the entire way, but definitely more obvious at the tip. Another thing about these figures being that they are basic, it looks absolutely as skinny as it gets. They are always so thin, making the dinosaur look like it's completely starved to death, but that's also just something that's very common with the basics. The underside also sports some pretty nice looking, very, again, reptilian style scale detail. Reminds me kind of like a snake as far as the scale detail goes. The undersides of the feet also have some nice detailing, but the skin texture looks pretty good down there. The other side's, of course, going to look pretty much the same. Being a figure like this, there's really not much going on that would differentiate one side to the other, outside of the fact that the leg is leading on this side as opposed to trailing on the other side, and of course the tail would curve in this direction. But outside of that, it pretty much looks the same, although the eye is definitely, here we go, look, the eye is really sloppy on this side. Almost doesn't even look like we have a pupil at all, so I'm just going to assume that our Yangchuanosaurus is blind in this eye. But even if it doesn't have the best paintwork in the world and isn't the best version of a Yangchuanosaurus that exists, it's still kind of a fun figure. As far as the articulation goes, we only really have the arm articulation, forward and back, which does move pretty smoothly. The leg articulation, which is super smooth actually. Forward and back, it goes about that far, and that's about as far forward as it goes. Same deal for the other leg. It's about as far as we get there. And then you also have the tail articulation, which can move up, down, left, right. It's not going to swivel. It like tries to, but the positioning of the tail just is not going to allow it to swivel. But as far as a size goes, for a length, you're looking at about 13 inches, almost on the dot, or about 33 centimeters. And then for a height to the top of the head, about 5 3/4 inches, or 14.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day human being next to our Mattel basic Yangchuanosaurus. And I don't think we need to do too many comparisons this time around because, I mean, we have a pretty good idea already of what the size of the basics are. They've been out for so long, and the sizes of the figures never really differentiate that much from each other. So I don't feel like we really need too many different comparisons, though I will do at least a few more, but I mean, not that many. Also, I just noticed one thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about the articulation. We do also have ankle swivels. So before we go any further, I did want to mention that because I forgot to mention it before. But again, you can see basically what the size of this is right there where they usually are when it comes to a basic figure release. For another comparison, we have the basic version of the Scorpius Rex here next to the Yangchuanosaurus. You can see the Scorpius Rex is just maybe a hair bigger, but they are very similarly sized. The Scorpius is probably the largest basic figure I think we ever had, so that does tell you that the Yangchuanosaurus is pretty decently sized. Then here is the basic Parasaurolophus next to the Yangchuanosaurus, again showing you that they're pretty much the same size overall, which the basics usually are all a very similar size. And then the only other figure I really wanted to do a size comparison with was the original version of the Yangchuanosaurus, and yeah, you can see that the original version is definitely a little bit longer, but actually looking at the two here, which you may not be able to really see too well from your vantage point, but if we bring them both in here, you can see the tail length is actually pretty similar. I actually thought that the basic version had a slightly longer tail, but it seems as though I'm wrong. It is very similar in size to the original release. Not that the tail is disgustingly small, but it really could have been a little bit bigger to make the figure look nicer. I think the basic version might have a very slight advantage in tail length, but not enough to really improve the overall appearance of this figure. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World, I guess Epic Evolution Basic Yangchuanosaurus is definitely a really fun figure, and I'm not too sure that I would say I like it more than the mainline version. The advantage to this one over the mainline version, I think, is the fact that we don't have the areas for the articulation in like the midsection that kind of cut the figure up. We have just like that full body appearance for this one, which I do really quite like. And I also think that the head sculpt just for some reason looks a little bit nicer to me. Like, I don't know if it's just the fact that the mouth stays closed and the, mainline one, the mouth kind of hangs open, makes this one look a little bit cooler to me, but it just for some reason does. However, this is a basic figure, which means it's uber thin, which is kind of obnoxious, and also has the most basic paint apps as well as the most basic articulation. But the articulation thing's not a huge deal to me because I do like having something a little bit different, and since the original one had lots of articulation, I don't mind having less on this one. But the paint apps are, specifically the eyes, that just look so bad with the paintwork of the eyes of this one. I really think it could have used some better eye paint. The teeth not being painted, as always, is a downside, but at least they have a little bit of a gloss coat, so it's not terrible, I guess. The brown does end shorter than it does on the mainline one. It also just has less brown on it as you move through, but outside of that, the paint apps are kind of similar. Also, the light greenish yellow that is on the lower jaw runs further on the mainline version than it does in this one, but it still looks pretty cool. It's got a very highly detailed sculpt, and overall is just a fun little, again, cheaper version of the Yangchuanosaurus from Mattel. It's also a little smaller than the mainline version, which causes it to actually look kind of neat standing with it, almost like they are a family, and this is just a little bit of a younger version. But overall, it's still kind of cool, and if you are interested in ordering one, I will include a link in the description to where I purchased mine from Big Bad Toy Store, as well as you can purchase the entire wave. If you don't have any of them, you can pick the Suchomimus, Dilophosaurus, and Velociraptor Blue up all in one shot by buying the entire wave. So if you are interested, make sure you check the link in the description. Go grab this very cool Yangchuanosaurus, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.